All right, everybody, welcome into the NFL Seekers podcast. We got a fun episode planned for you guys today. We're going to be going over our fantasy football busts, and we're kind of saying bust in a lightly used term. It's going to be players who we think drastically underperform their ADP. So kind of bust, kind of just underperforming guys. I'm excited to talk about this one because I got some guys I really don't like that I'm going to throw out here. But how are you guys doing? You guys ready for this one?
Yeah, it's always fun to talk fantasy. Um, this one's going to be interesting. I know there's going to be some disagreeing going on with some of ours, but it's going to be fun to talk about and talk through, and maybe we can try to convince each other to hop on board with either of our busts or those that we think will underperform their ADP. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm feeling good, man. The boys just got back from a nice day of golf. We're excited to talk some fantasy football busts, and by busts we really do mean just players that we're really not drafting with their current ADP.
Yeah,
like
the guys I'm going to talk about, I wouldn't. Well, one guy I don't want, but the other two guys I wouldn't mind having. It just depends on how far they fall in the draft.
Absolutely. And like Dan said, we just all had a good day of golf. Riding a high right now, super happy. Just golfed the best day of my life. I'm pumped. But yeah, some of these guys, it's not like we wouldn't like having them on our team. It's just the places where they're being drafted, we feel uncomfortable taking them that high. So most likely they won't be on our fantasy teams, and we're going to deter you from drafting them at their current ADPs. But
for me at least, where these guys are being drafted, the three I'm going to talk about, there's just so many other guys in different positions I would much rather have at their ADPs than take a risk on my three busts I'm going to talk about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm honestly super excited to hear you guys' bust. So do you guys just want to get right into it?
Let's do it. Dan, you start us off.
All right, I'm going to start us off with an interesting one. I'm going to go with the very confusing Alvin Kamara. As you can see, he's right here next to me, his jersey. I'm a big fan ever since his rookie year. I've been a huge Alvin Kamara fan, but the uncertainty of this suspension that's apparently happening or not happening, like, it's just so weird. I have no clue if he's going to be suspended for half the season, the full season, nothing at all. Like, I hate it so much. Like, it's projected to be 6 weeks right now, which isn't crazy bad, but I mean, honestly, if he somehow isn't suspended, I'm still nervous about Kamara because the last 2 years have honestly been a little bit rough watching back. He hasn't been the same explosive as he has in years past, especially as a receiver and especially as a runner. In between the tackles, he's been almost just completely ineffective the last 2 years, and he just hasn't looked like the Alvin Kamara of old, and it sucks. I hope he has a little career rejuvenation with Derek Carr coming in, but man, I see him having even more of a regression. I think he's going into his year 28 season, so he's not getting into his prime or anything. And this is where running backs start regressing more. They brought in Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller, who are both really solid running backs, and Kendre Miller's a little bit similar to Kamara, and Jamal Williams is just like the best backup running back in the NFL that can easily be a starter. So I'm a huge Kamara fan, but I'm like really nervous about it. I'm not going to draft him in any of my leagues. I don't even know if I'm going to draft any of the Saints running backs, but if I am, it's definitely going to be Jamal Williams or Kendre Miller.
Yeah. Dan, what is his current ADP right now?
We're going to be talking a lot about ADP this episode. You just get used to us talking about saying ADP, which is obviously average draft position.
Yeah, so Kamara is being drafted as the very last pick in the 6th round right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that, especially like you already mentioned with the Jamal Williams coming in. I feel like that's going to just vulture all of his touchdowns. I mean, all the goal line is going to go to Jamal Williams. I mean, he was fantastic last year at the goal line, and that's why they brought him in. But yeah, I agree. The suspension is just looming and it's just uncomfortable. And if he's still going 6th, I just don't know if I mean, he hasn't been as productive as, we'd like Alvin Kamara to be. He's definitely regressed a lot, and I expect him to regress again, especially with the crowded running back room.
Yeah, he's got Javonte Williams, Rachaad White, Pacheco, David Montgomery, James Cook, all going behind him. And I think I would take every single one of them ahead of Kamara, and even Jamal Williams I would take ahead of Kamara. So I'm just not touching Kamara in that 6th round. I'd rather get a much more valuable asset that can play for my team.
Preach.
I mean, assuming that some sort of suspension, whether it's 2 games, 6 games, whatever it may be, he does fall on Alvin Kamara, I'm sure his ADP will fall come draft season. And at some point, it could make it worth it. But in the 6th round, that's a bit absurd to be taking a guy with that many question marks that early.
Yeah, and he only had 2 rushing touchdowns last year. It just seems like his explosive plays have just dropped off tremendously, and that's kind of what was carrying him in fantasy and making him so valuable in fantasy. So I don't think Kamara is going to be good in fantasy anymore for the rest of his career. I think it's over.
Wow, that's sad to think
Sucks.
about right there. It breaks my heart, honestly.
Yeah.
Loved Alvin Kamara. I had him his rookie season, and it was fantastic.
Mhm.
But I'll get into
I hope he proves me wrong, man. He's like one of my favorite players, and he's so fun to watch when he is healthy. Like some of his receiving touchdowns he has are so fun. So I really hope he proves me wrong, but it's looking bleak for his outlook right now.
for sure. I'll get into my number one right here, who's going to be Mr. Jonathan Taylor, and he's got a current ADP of 9 right now. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be a lot lower on Jonathan Taylor than most, but I got burned bad by Jonathan Taylor last year. And I'll have a hot take for you guys. I don't think he's that good. I really don't. Oh, yeah. I'll use this in a light term. I don't think he's that good of a fantasy running back. I think he can be a good NFL running back, but he just doesn't excite me fantasy wise, especially this year with Shane Steichen coming in and Anthony Richardson coming in. And at 9, I feel like there's just so many better players. Maybe if it's, towards the mid-second round, I'd like it a lot more. But Jonathan Taylor just flat out wasn't very good last year. And he's not much of a PPR. He doesn't have a lot of receiving upside. And especially with Anthony Richardson coming in, I don't think that helps him. I think that takes away touchdowns. And I don't think he's going to get many targets at all. But with that being said, I do think he's a good NFL running back. I just don't think he's a good fantasy running back. And at 9, it's just too rich for me, and I don't feel comfortable.
It's tough with him. I think with him having such a down year last year, running backs as a whole had a down year last year. So they're going to fall on ADP for drafts for this upcoming season. Where he's going, you said he's going at the 109 towards the end of the first round.
Yes, and the thing is, like, there's about a handful of receivers and a handful of running backs I'd way rather take over him, and even Travis Kelce. And the reason, Jonathan Taylor had that incredible breakout year, but his red zone touch percentage was 80%. His red zone share was 80%. That is unheard of. I don't think we've ever seen a running back ever get 80% of the red zone touches. And that was his 2021 season, which was amazing. I mean, he scored like 20 touchdowns, but I don't think he'll ever get 80% of a red zone share ever again. And he's getting a lot of 1-yard touchdowns too.
Dan, what do you think about JT?
I'm on the side where I completely disagree with Josh, man. Like at the 9th overall pick, I would take him around the 5th overall pick, and like that would be a little high for me. But if I had the 7th overall pick and Jonathan Taylor was there, that's so easy for me. I honestly think he's going to have a pretty solid season. I think Shane Steichen coming in is just going to pretty much center that offense around him and Anthony Richardson's running abilities. And I really don't think I think where Jonathan Taylor's being drafted.
Please draft him.
I probably will if I have a pick around 9. That's that's a crazy steal to me.
What I was starting to say was I feel like towards the end of the first round is honestly good value for Jonathan Taylor. We saw what he can do 2 years ago. Last year was just a down year as a whole for running backs, as I mentioned, but also the Colts. They had weird situations with their coaching staff or just head coach, and their quarterback play was terrible. I'm not saying Anthony Richardson as a rookie is going to come in and be amazing, but even though he's a runner, he's still going to rely on guys like Jonathan Taylor as a rookie. So I definitely do err on the side of I like JT. So I guess I do disagree with you.
It's fair. It's fair. This is a good, healthy practice, to get some opinions out.
He completely burned Josh last year, so it totally makes sense why someone that drafted him last year wouldn't want him. He was terrible last year, but
Josh took him with the third pick.
Yeah, exactly.
I got great value for his, him being the number 1 running back going into last year. But yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see that 2021 season again from Jonathan Taylor. I think it was just an unrealistic season. And I don't know. I don't feel like with the Colts system, I know Shane Steichen's a brilliant offensive coordinator, and I'm so excited to see what he draws up for the Colts. But I do think Anthony Richardson is going to be the beneficiary of more touchdowns. And I don't think it's just, and we play a PPR format too. And if you're in a PPR league, I want a running back with receiving upside. And Jonathan Taylor just doesn't have much of that. And that's what kind of scares me when there's like, guys like Bijan, Eckler that he's being compared to, who are going to get 5 to 8 targets a game, and I think Jonathan Taylor, you're hoping on 2 to 3.
Yeah, speaking of Bijan, I think I'd have him right behind Bijan in my rankings because Bijan just has too much upside. But I think I would take Jonathan Taylor right after. He doesn't have as much receiving upside, but he will take screens sometimes. I just think he's a really good running back, man. He's so good, and the Colts are going to be improved. I understand he won't have 80% red zone share, but I mean he's going to have a high red zone share still. He's their whole offense that they're going to center it around, and their passing game isn't too good, so I think they're just going to completely run the hell out of the ball next year.
Yeah, I mean, I do think he does have potential to be good, but I'm just at his ADP, I do think he will be a bust. And I just, I'm gonna tell anyone who likes to listen to me, stay away from him. But I could be wrong. But Jonathan Taylor sucks. Hot take.
All right.
As fantasy running back, not real running back.
Yeah. This is, we're talking fantasy here. My first bust I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to get him out of the way because I'm pretty sure every single fantasy football episode we've talked about, I've talked about my hate towards this guy, and that's Kyle Pitts. So right now, no shocker. Right now, his current ADP is the end of the 5th round, the 5'11". That is a 5th round pick that I'm just going to read off some names, and you tell me, not necessarily, these aren't tight ends, but in the 5th, I'd say 4th through 8th round are guys you can get who straight up win you leagues. Kyle Pitts has proven twice he's going to lose you leagues. So for example, Terry McLaurin's going in the 5th round. I'd much rather have a guy like Terry McLaurin with the situation he's in right now, with the upside he has, than Kyle Pitts. I would much rather have Jerry Jeudy, who's going in the middle of the 5th round, than Kyle Pitts. I would even rather have a guy on a bad offense. Chris Godwin is going late 5th round as well. He still has upside. He's still a great wide receiver. And then also Hollywood Brown, he's also on a bad offense, but he's as the wide receiver 1. He's proven he can have some big boom games. So for example, those type of guys I would rather have on my team, who have that big boom potential, than a big risk in a guy like Kyle Pitts. And then, if we're talking tight end, I'd rather have a guy like Pat Freiermuth, who's going 3 rounds later in the 8th round. A guy like Pat, who could very well finish above Kyle Pitts.
I get what you're saying. Some of those guys that are going in the 5th round, I do agree with you on. I feel like it completely just depends on how your team is built. Like if you have a quarterback, a running back, a receiver, or a quarterback, 2 running backs, a receiver already, and you're in the 5th round, and you feel like you want the upside of really high upside tight end, then I think Kyle Pitts is still a good pick in the 5th round. I don't think it's too bad with his upside, but I understand there's safer options later.
So Dallas Goedert is going six picks later than Kyle Pitts. Goddard is a much safer guy to have in your tight end than Kyle Pitts.
That's where it gets tough. Goddard going 6 picks after seems a little rough with how good he was last year. But yeah, like I said, Pitts has so much upside.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I love Pitts. And I think me and Dan are both decided we love Pitts because there's about 5 good tight ends every year. You can never trust a tight end. But Kyle Pitts and his upside and his athleticism, and he's coming into his 3rd year, I think there's going to be some positive, progression going on. And I like the upside of Pitts, especially, like some of the guys you're naming. I think I would rather have Kyle Pitts because tight end is just so hard and it's so frustrating in fantasy football. Like tight ends will drive you nuts. I mean, if you have a tight end that scores over 8 points a game, you're usually pretty happy. I mean, most of these tight ends almost bust like 90% of the time. It's so frustrating unless you have Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews.
You said you set the line at 8 points is kind of where you want it?
Yeah.
If I'm getting a bottom line tight end, yeah.
Okay, so
Like if I'm
you're
drafting
talking a
like
bottom
the
line. So I'm
4th or
talking a
5th.
fifth round. No, stop talking for a second. I'm talking a fifth round tight end here. Do you want to hear his points last year? 3 points. This is full PPR, by the way.
Oh, Shane, Travis Kelce had a better game in
3
one
points.
than Travis Kelce all season.
Shut your mouth for a
I
second.
mean, I don't
Kyle
know.
Pitts starting week 1. 3 points, 3 points, 13 points, 3 points, 10 points, 3 points, 19 points, 4 points, 4 points, 7 points.
Forget about last season. Forget about last season.
Why? It was only his second
Because
season.
that was rock bottom. That was the worst you'll ever see from Kyle Pitts. It's only up from here. The dude is too good. He was the
Okay.
best tight end
Fine.
prospect
You
we've
want
ever
to
seen.
No, you need to stop talking for 2 seconds. And you knew him. You don't want to talk about last season. Let's go back to his rookie season. Yeah, sure, he had 1,000 yards, but he went. We starting week 1, 7 points, 12 points, 5 points, 9 points. Big game, 26 points, 23 points, 3 points, 9 points, 5 points, 4 points, 8 points. Like, dude, half the time he was like, I don't know.
I'm not going to fault you for not taking him. I'm not going to fault you for taking him because
all I'm trying to say is Stores set that line for a bottom end tight end at 8 points. Kyle Pitts hit it like twice last year.
I think we're gonna see the best season yet from Kyle Pitts. That's a hot take because he was bad, and you have a right to hate Kyle Pitts because that dude sucked last.
It's just I don't get why.
Okay,
it doesn't make any sense why people are still kind of hyping him up going into his 3rd season when he's proved them wrong the last 2 seasons. Like, at what point are we going to give up on Kyle Pitts?
I think if he sucks this year,
when he leaves the Falcons, sure.
Yeah. I mean,
I think it's this year. This year's
points.
make or break for Kyle Pitts. If he's not good this year, he's off the team probably. But
he's not going to be good this year.
They're not going to get his 5th year option, and I think that's what it comes down to. Is he might get traded for peanuts essentially if he underperforms this year. And they did get Jonnu Smith to light a fire under his ass, so we'll see. I think it is a make or break, and Kyle Pitts has got to step up to the plate. And I agree with your point, Shane. He's been bad. But I do just think there's potential there. I mean, he was the best tight end prospect we've ever seen. And I'm banking off of that for him to have a bounce back season. But you do have good points. So I do agree with you there.
Thanks, man.
It's hard because, I mean, Josh had Kyle Pitts on his breakouts and Shane has him on his bust. So it's literally I'm like in the middle. So it's really hard to discuss this for fantasy. But I guess it's just really your guys' gut feelings. If you guys trust in the Falcons offense taking a step up and them involving Kyle Pitts more than take it. I think
it does scare me. It does scare me. There is upside, but it scares the hell out of me. And I'm not
doubting. I'm not doubting Kyle Pitts as an NFL player. It's just the situation he's in. I don't know, maybe it's the player. I mean, I get he's a great athlete, but I don't know, man. He's got.
He's been disappointing to say the least. I mean, we were expecting the next, George Kittle type prospect from Kyle Pitts. Somebody just fantastic. That's just, goes out there and he just, gets 120 yards and a touchdown every game. That's what we're hoping to see from Kyle Pitts. And boy, has he, Travis Kelce literally had games where he scored 3 touchdowns and had 200 yards, which is Kyle Pitts' entire season last year. So draft Kelce in the 1st round if you can. Dude's a stud.
Yeah, then you don't have to worry about guys like Pitts.
then all your tight end problems are solved. There's one good tight end every year for the last 10 years and probably for the next 5 years. That's Mr. Travis Kelce. So, if you don't want to have to worry about tight end, just get him on your team. Draft him 3rd overall. I don't care. He's worth it.
Yeah. Going to be super excited to see how Kyle Pitts does this year. It's going to be a very big topic in fantasy football. But with that, we'll get into my number 2 player. And I'm going to go with the receiver for the Buccaneers, the veteran, Mike Evans, man. It's hard with Mike Evans because he's such a fan favorite. He's been good for so long. The main reason for this is because they've got new offensive coordinator coming in from Seattle, Dave Canales, coming in, bringing in a Shanahan wide zone scheme. I'm really nervous for the outlook of Evans. When you think about these Shanahan offenses, I can't name one perimeter receiver that they use at all in any of these Shanahan offenses, and like about half the league runs them now. So I'm really nervous to see how they use Mike Evans. And don't say he's going to be their DK Metcalf because he's really nothing like DK Metcalf at all. They play completely differently. They just built the same. But Mike Evans solely relies on touchdowns. And I think with Baker Mayfield coming in, he loves the intermediate game. He loves throwing over the middle. I think he's going to love Chris Godwin. So my take this year is that Chris Godwin will be a relevant fantasy option, and Mike Evans should just completely be faded. I'm not taking him in any leagues, and I'm really scared for him, man.
DDP, please.
He's been in a spread offense his whole career, and now he's going into a Shanahan scheme, a modern Shanahan Seattle scheme, and I'm not really thinking that Mike Evans can adapt with this Baker Mayfield Canales offense.
Uh,
I'm just like, so he's going. His ADP right now is the second pick in the 7th round.
I don't hate that by any means, personally. I know I'm kind of higher on Mike Evans because he's had 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons with a carousel of quarterbacks. And dating back to Texas A&M, Mike Evans had Johnny Manziel thrown to him. Kind of reminds me of a little bit of a Baker Mayfield. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know if I'll draft Mike Evans this year, but it's kind of hard, just the dude's been the model of consistency his entire career. And it's just hard to think that he won't put up another 1,000-yard seasons. He's never not had a 1,000-yard season in his entire career. It's nuts.
I mean, he still had 1,200 yards last year, and he really he was still a struggle in fantasy. He had like 3 really good weeks, and the rest were pretty terrible. So even with his 1,200 yards season, and he won't have 1,200 yards this year. That's for
what about as like a flex wide receiver?
So that's what I was going to say. If I could get Mike Evans as my flex or down as my wide receiver 3 or down, I would be happy with that. Having him as my wide receiver 2, I don't know if I'd be.
Yeah, no way.
I wouldn't be. I'd just be neutral with it. I feel like that would kind of be. I don't want to say a weak spot in a team because I feel like that's a bit harsh, but
it'd be a weak spot.
It could be. Yeah.
I like, our opinions all differ. So, it's fun. We get to play devil's advocate with each other and, make each other think a little bit. So this is a fun exercise.
Mike Evans is that guy. Like, I'm just looking at his points last year, PPR points. He's going to get you a handful, well, not a handful. I'd say 2+, 30+ games a year. Last year he had 30 points week 4. He had 48 points in that championship weekend.
Yeah, I feel like he is very boom.
He's gonna have those big boom games, but it does feel like he's gonna start disappearing more and having more of these 8 to 10 point games rather than 18+ point games, which we've seen out of him 2 years back and before. So yeah, just definitely. I mean, and I also wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't hit 1,000 yards this year either.
Yeah, his touchdowns did take a hit though, like to go on Dan's. I mean, he went from 13, 14 to 6 last year, and that was with playing with Tom Brady in a spread offense.
Yeah, I would say 6 would be his ceiling this year too.
6 touchdowns.
Yeah, like 6 ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah, that does worry me. I mean, that it dropped off so drastically. I mean, especially playing with a quarterback like Tom Brady. So that does worry me a little bit.
He still finished as the wide receiver 16 last year, which actually surprises me. Granted, I know that 48-point performance that bumped him up.
Oh yeah, that's like playing like literally like 3 good games, 3 weeks.
Fantasy championship week too.
The 5 weeks, the 5 weeks before that big fantasy championship weekend, 4 of those 5 games he was in single-digit PPR points. That's pretty god awful, especially when you're coming down the stretch of fantasy season. That's bad.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like he had a 1,200-yard year last year. He had that crazy week 17, and it still didn't matter because all of his owners weren't starting him in week 17 because he was giving them 5 points the weeks prior. So,
right. All right. Well, I'll get into my number 2, which is going to be Mr. Deebo Samuel, and you guys kind of put a sour taste of Deebo Samuel. I think was it on our mock episode? I can't remember what episode.
It was in our ranking episode.
Yeah, fantasy football receiver rankings.
Oh yes, receiver rankings. And you guys just put a sour taste in my mouth with Deebo Samuel. I mean, his current ADP is 38. And I hate him. I do not like him. I mean, essentially Brandon Ayuk became a better receiver than him. And he cried about being this hybrid running back. And so they went and got Christian McCaffrey, who took, that's now Christian McCaffrey's role. He's the hybrid. He's running those, Texas wheel routes and everything. And, he took over that role from Deebo, which made him so productive 2 years ago. But I mean, Deebo was 77 receptions for 1,400 yards in 2021. And then he was 56 for 632 and 2 touchdowns in 2022. And I don't think he's going to improve much. I don't think he'll improve from last season, and I don't want anything to do with him. I don't think he's the best wide receiver on his team, and now he's definitely not the best running back on his team. And he kind of just phased himself out by kind of crying about, he's like, I want to be a true receiver. I don't want to be this hybrid running back receiver, which made him so lethal. And I hate him. I don't want him. I don't want him where he's being drafted. I want nothing to do with him.
This is one I do agree with, because I'm not drafting Debo where he's being drafted. He's being drafted like almost 3 rounds ahead of Ayuk, and I straight up just take Ayuk over Debo.
Ayuk was way better. He's a way better receiver, and Brock Purdy loved Ayuk. I mean,
Purdy loved it.
Hell out of it.
I agree with you completely, except for the part where you said he won't be better. I think he'll improve a little bit, because I mean, he had 2 receiving touchdowns last year.
Yeah,
as a number 1 receiver, like you can't be that bad. He had more rushing touchdowns, and like you said, he's not going to run it as much with McCaffrey coming in. So I kind of think he'll have a little bit of a better receiving season, but he's still not worth it.
Brandon Ayuk had 78 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns last season. That's kind of their wide receiver 1 right now, in my opinion.
All 4. So Debo's been in the league 4 seasons now. Every season he's played 13 games. You're almost guaranteed to miss around 4 games. In the past he's been your wide receiver 1. I guess he could be your wide receiver 2, depending on he's going in the first pick in the 4th round is what I'm seeing. You said late 3rd round is going right around there, the 3-4 turn. That's probably your wide receiver 2, could be your wide receiver 1. He's going to be missing games. I mean, I know you can't predict injury, but all 4 seasons he's missed what is that, 4 games?
I don't like that.
I think if Debo Samuel is your number 1 receiver in your draft, you should just give all the buy-in money and just give it to the someone in your league, because you're not going to win your league. You're going to be terrible.
You're done. Yeah.
That's where he's looking. It's nuts. I'm looking at these rankings here, and the rankings I'm looking at have Debo and Mike Evans back to back. Who would you guys rather have? Debo in a full PPR, Debo or Mike Evans?
That's a disaster for me. I would still probably take Debo.
Wait, in like where they're being drafted at? You're saying they're right back to back?
No, not where they're being drafted, just as wide receiver rankings.
Oh,
I would take Debo strictly off value.
I would probably rather have Debo.
And their offense is so much better.
Better offense. Yep. Yeah, I'd rather have Debo, but it's close.
I would rather have Evans, I'll be honest, especially where he's being drafted at. I'd way rather have Evans as a flex or a wide receiver 3 over Debo as my wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. I want nothing to do with Debo.
Yeah, where he's being drafted, I would agree. It's just if I had to pick right next to each other.
Okay. My next guy, someone on here. He's not going to be too thrilled about this, but it's Mr. Javonte Williams.
Man,
he's currently going in the second pick in the 7th round. First things first, they added Samaje Perine. Samaje Perine is not a nobody. When he was a starter for the Bengals last year, when Joe Mixon was out, he was an instant plug and play. Like, this dude's going to be a top 15 guy. Samaje is going end of the 9th round, almost into the 10th round. The value there of Samaje, who very well could be the only running back for the first couple weeks, we don't know. If Javonte could miss a couple weeks, and then it's still going to take time for him to kind of ease into it. It's scary with the injury he's coming back from. Samaje Perine, who is a very good running back, and so I kind of got a couple guys here I think I would rather have. So Alexander Mattison, he's going a couple picks just before Javonte. I'd much rather have Alexander Mattison, who's healthy week 1. Whenever Alexander Mattison was a plug and play for Dalvin Cook when he was out, Mattison was like a guaranteed top 20 guy. Rashad White, we've talked about Rashad White. I'd much rather have Rashad White, who's going 2 picks after Javonte. Give me all the Rashad White over Javonte. So guys like that with that kind of upside, who are going to be there week 1, I would rather have than a guy like Javonte.
I like that, Shane. I agree, and I'm just going to let Dan have the floor here.
I agree with the Perine part. I agree that Perine's definitely like a top 3 RB2 in the NFL, so he's going to be really good, and we don't need to play Javonte. We don't need to start him at all. We don't need to rush him. Yeah. But the thing is, dude, like, they're having voluntary OTA, voluntary training camp, or not even training camp, just voluntary OTAs right now, and he's out there playing as their starting running back. It's not like he's just not out there. Like, I don't understand why people aren't expecting him to be out there if he's out there for voluntary stuff. Obviously, he's not going crazy hard, but he's been out there every single day for the last few weeks, and there's still training camp. He's going to be out there every day for that. He'll be out there for the preseason. So I don't know why like everyone's like thinking he's going to be out for like half the season.
Why is
No,
there
not half.
Wait, can I cut you guys off both?
Yeah, you're good.
Why is there so much rumors about the Broncos getting every free agent running back? Like I just saw one today about Leonard Fournette, and then it was Dalvin Cook, and then it was Zeke, and I'm like,
Well, they've been super linked to Dalvin Cook because our GM George Payton comes from Minnesota and
oh,
drafted him. So they've always just been linked for like the last few years. But
I saw Lenny today, which was weird.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. That would be crazy. But I just think with Pirine, I agree that they don't need to rush him. But I just think that he's going to be ready sooner rather than later. So I just think that this round 7 value is pretty crazy considering he'd probably be at least a top 2 or 3 round pick if he was completely healthy.
Okay, even if he is there week 1, they're probably going to be, maybe he has a slight edge, probably not on Samaje on carries. Now you're looking at like a DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, a backfield from last year. I can tell you personally, that sucked.
Well, I guess you could kind of look at it like him and Melvin Gordon last year, how everyone is projecting them to split 50-50 and then him to kind of take over at the end of the season. I think that's kind of similar to that. And he was still being drafted in the 3rd round. So I don't know, man. I think it's just incredible value. I agree. Some of the guys going next to him, Rachaad White and Alexander Madison. That's good. I would take Alexander Madison over him because there's so much hype around him right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachaad White probably as well if I wanted to RB2. But if you can get Javonte as your flex, I just think it's incredible value.
We'll see. I don't know. It's hard to say right now because we don't know. I think it is a question mark if he's there week 1. I'm not saying he won't be. I don't know. I'm not there at Broncos, OTAs and all that. But we just don't know. It's a big question mark. And to draft a guy with one of the first picks in the 7th round, which is where you can get big breakout guys, it's very scary.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of both of you guys. Like, yes, I don't know. That's tough. That's one I had to think about for a little bit. But yeah, there's guys I probably want, but I feel like it's okay value. I don't know. It all depends, if he's healthy and ready to go week 1.
Yeah, I respect you not drafting him. I just think with like if he was being drafted in the first 5 rounds, I would agree. But I just think where he's being drafted is acceptable.
If he was being drafted where Samaje is going, end of the 9th into the 10th, yeah, I think wouldn't mind that. But early 7th round, that is, I don't know.
That's fair. Perine's a really good running back, man. If he goes out the season and starts, and if he does what he did last year and looks just as good as a starter, then they have no reason to make Javonte their main guy. So I get it. They're probably gonna have a pretty big split. They're both really good, but they will run the ball a lot. I think they're gonna run their offense through Javonte and Pirine. So I don't know. I think he's gonna be worth it, but I understand.
I just like the Broncos slander. Makes me laugh. Thanks for throwing that out there, Shane.
Got you.
It made me happy. But yeah, I'll just say I'm kind of split. I don't hate the value, but if there's guys like Madison and Rachaad White, I think that's a no-brainer for me. I mean, those guys are the true RB1s in their system, and there's no backup, to compete with them. So,
and they're young, they're coming in healthy. Yeah. Rachaad White's a PPR machine. Yeah, give me guys like that all day.
Yeah, preach. I love it. All right, Dan. Who's Dan's last bust?
All right, we will get into my last bust, and it is the young Jacksonville Jaguars running back, Travis Etienne.
Yes, I hate him.
Man, something about Travis Etienne, just ever since he came into the league, he's been so underwhelming to me, and I really am not excited about him as someone that was supposed to be a really fun, electric, legendary receiving back because he was taking in the 1st round to be literally like a slot receiver. He had 0 reception touchdowns last year. And just like, what does he do? He's not very great in between the tackles. He has some explosive outside run plays. He'll break away for some runs, but that's all I've really noticed from him the last few years. And I'm definitely nitpicking, but he's being drafted early in the 3rd round, and I'm not taking him in any league. I will do all season. I'm not going to have any shares of Travis Etienne. I just think that's way too rich for someone that hasn't really proven anything since he's been in the league. He's been all right, but he hasn't really gotten high like ceiling games, and he hasn't been too exciting to me as a running back in general or in fantasy.
I think I don't not like Travis Etienne. I had him in my top 10 running back rankings. I had him at like 10 or 9, right around there. Just last year was interesting because we thought he was gonna be the guy, and then all of a sudden James Robinson for the first 4 weeks, it was the James Robinson show. And then I don't know what happened. They phased him out, then they traded him, and then starting week 5, PPR points, ETN was 14, 12, 19, 25, 26, 10, and then their bye week. And then after their bye week, he had 3 down games, and then 12, 14, 23. So he was definitely up and down last year, but he had a lot of value. I think a middle third round ADP isn't terrible for a guy like Travis Etienne. I can see why someone wouldn't like him necessarily. He's on an offense they have a lot of weapons. And is it Tank Bigsby that's behind him?
Yeah, they brought in rookie Tank Bigsby. They drafted Snoop Connor last year. They have JaMychal Hasty, and they also brought in Dearness Johnson, which no one really talks about, but that's a pretty stacked running back room now.
It really is. It really is. So there's definitely a lot of mouths to feed, especially in the running back room. I think Tank Bigsby is going to be used. I wouldn't be surprised if you see guys like JaMychal Hasty get a lot of touches. I mean, who knows? Dearness Johnson could be relevant. I mean, or he could get cut before the season starts. Then don't obviously there's a wide receiver room. He's tough. I think if he's our number one guy, I think he'll outperform his ADP personally. I'm definitely higher on him than you two are, but that's just me.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess he did really hit rock bottom with 0 receiving touchdowns. I'm sure he will be better. And looking at the running backs behind him, I guess it does make sense. Ramondre has really shot up ADP because I remember Ramondre was being drafted behind him, and I hated that. But now he's going right back ahead of him, and I agree with that. But yeah, I'm not taking ETN in the 3rd round. There's other players I'm more intrigued by, and ETN's not one.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of hate him, but I hate him for other reasons too.
What are your other reasons?
You an Ohio State fan?
That's the Chargers. The Chargers are the worst run defense in history. But I don't know. There's a little salt running through my blood.
Are you an Ohio State fan? Did Clemson ruin your dreams or something? Or
no. He on a 3rd down that the Chargers could have tackled it, forced a punt, and won or not let the Jacksonville Jaguars win off of a game-winning field goal. He freaking takes a handoff, hits the edge, and goes for like 60 yards. It was like 2 years ago when Josh Jacobs did it to us in overtime too. It's just same story. Hurts my heart, hurts my soul as a Chargers fan. And there's a little salt that I'm a little biased because I don't like him because of that. But he just doesn't. When I watch Travis Etienne, he doesn't look very good. Like he just doesn't run very hard, and he doesn't catch very well. And like Dan said, I mean, he was supposed to be this electric receiving back, and he kind of sucked. I mean, his first year was bad. I remember him just straight up just dropping passes all the time. And then no receiving touchdowns last year. I mean, that's what this dude was drafted for. I mean, that's why you're drafted high, is when when you can catch at running back. I mean, those are the guys who are, the fantasy monsters and, the best running backs in the NFL, Austin Eckler's and Christian McCaffrey's and Saquon Barkley's. These guys can catch. And Travis Etienne just doesn't do that. I just feel like he doesn't do anything very well,
Yeah, remember Urban Meyer drafted him, and then he started playing him in the slot, saying he was going to be their slot receiver, and they were just hyping out to be some incredibly smooth receiver. But watching him, like you said, he isn't a smooth player. He's not really a smooth athlete, and it kind of surprised me.
Mm-hmm. So I know you guys always mention with Kyle Pitts, he's at rock bottom, and it's only up from here. I guess you can make the same thing, not rock bottom, but with the 0 receiving touchdowns, that seems a bit strange. I'm sure that's going to go up. He only started in 12 games and still finished as a running back 17.
That's not bad.
While sharing the backfield with James Robinson, I think there's a good chance he's going to start all 17 games this year and finish as a top 10 guy. I mean, obviously that's how I had it, as when I had him in my top 10 rankings. If he starts all 17 games, this guy's going to outperform his ADP. That's how I feel. He only started 12 games last year.
I have a weird feeling that like Tanks Bigsby and maybe even Dearness Johnson are going to take like half of his touches. I just have that weird feeling in my stomach. And I feel like Tanks Bigsby is a really good running back. I mean, him coming out of Auburn, he was a big bruiser. And I like his, ability to run between the tackles and get those goal line touches for the Jaguars. So I don't know. There's a little salt in my wound, my wounds with Travis Etienne, but I just don't love him. I don't love him. There's players I'd much rather draft over him. I don't even know. What do you guys even remember when we did our running backs episode, like where I had him? I know I was super low on him.
Did you?
I
I
don't
don't think
remember,
you
but
had
he
him in your
was-
top 20,
Yeah.
Well, there you
which
go.
is
I don't
a
like
bit
it.
ridiculous. I'm going to be honest. I think you just forgot him because he's definitely a top 20 running back. He started in 12 games last year and finished as the number 17 guy.
Probably 20 running backs I'd rather have over him. We'll see. We'll
He's
see.
just trying to forget about that playoff game. But yeah, like you said, he does break off some like long runs. He will, but other than that, man, he hasn't really impressed me much. And I don't really believe in him, and I'm gonna let other people take him. Let's hear your number 2 though, Josh.
So my number three, last one.
Sorry.
But my number 3 is going to be Dak Prescott, a quarterback for the Cowboys, and he's just the model of healthy one season, not healthy, healthy, not healthy, and quite frankly, he kind of sucked last year. I mean, 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. Not very good. Dak Prescott was a lot of the reason the Cowboys were losing games. And I don't feel like the Cowboys got better. I feel like indeed they got worse, and they lost their offensive coordinator, who is an absolute guru and a guy who wants to score touchdowns, So, and then their receiving room, I mean, they got CeeDee Lamb, and then they got an aging Brandon Cooks. And then it's just not very good. And I don't know. I don't love Dak Prescott. And his ADP, I think, is what, 80. Let's see.
End of the 7th.
Yeah,
So,
and there's just quarterbacks I
7,
think
8
that
turn.
have more upside. Even like Shane talking about Kenny Pickett, I kind of like Kenny Pickett almost more than Dak. I mean, that's a bold hot take, but I'm just nothing about Dak and Mike McCarthy now calling plays and just straight up telling us we want to run the ball. We want our defense to just be on the field and playing really good defense, and we want to ground and pound we want to play an old style of football, which it's not good for a quarterback. So I don't love Dak this year.
Yeah, I can agree with this one. He's just someone that I don't want as my starting quarterback in fantasy. I feel like if Dak Prescott's your starting quarterback in fantasy, you failed. You're going to have a boring season. You're probably going to lose interest by week 10 because it's just Dak Prescott just doesn't elevate anything. He's never elevated the Cowboys, the great team around him, the great situation around him. He's never elevated a thing, and he's never impressed me at all. And he is always solid. He's going to get you he'll get you enough points. He might get around 15 every week. He's going to be somewhat like consistent in that way, but he's still also really inconsistent because he doesn't ever get like those big boom weeks. He kind of, it's either just around 15 points or he'll have a terrible week, but he never really has like those boom weeks. And I get Brandon Cooks coming in as nice, but like you said, Marty Schottenheimer and Mike McCarthy calling plays is a complete disaster.
And he's never healthy. When's the last time he played a full season, Shane? Can you tell me that?
Mississippi State, maybe?
He's never healthy. And Kellen Moore, Kellen Moore made Cooper Rush and Ben DiNucci look good. So, I mean, I don't know. It scares me. And Dak and the Cowboys they scare me. Maybe not Tony Pollard, but everyone else.
His first 2 seasons. Also, I think I was looking at Deebo Samuel. No, I think I was looking at Deebo Samuel wrong.
No, you said his ADP wrong, but you were off by like 5. You said
13 games,
7th round, and he was 8th round, so you were barely off.
No, but I think I said he played 13 games. I was looking at the wrong season. That was last season. But anyways, Dak actually his first 4 seasons,
he's had good seasons.
His first 4 seasons he played every game, and then 2020 he broke his ankle.
First 3 seasons.
2016 he played 100. He played 100% of snaps through week 16, and then right before the playoffs, week 17, he played 27%.
2020, 2021, and 2022 he didn't play a full season, right?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I said up till 2020. His 2016, 17, 18, 19, he played full seasons.
And his last 3 seasons, he's just been unhealthy. Okay.
Yeah, he's getting a little bit older. I think a 7th, 7-8 turn pick. That's crazy. That seems way too high for him. I thought he was going to be going 9+. That's really high. I actually did not realize that. That's crazy.
See, I'm a genius. Don't draft Dak Prescott. He sucks. I keep saying sucks. He doesn't suck. He's not going to be as good as.
He's a good quarterback.
Yeah. He's just not fantasy. Don't love him. Fantasy. I mean, his 2021 season was pretty good, but I don't know. I don't love him. I don't think he's going to improve, I should say, with Mike McCarthy, calling the plays.
Yeah, I mean, he's being drafted in the top 10, and he's not going to finish in the top 10. Deshaun Watson's going to have a better season than him, so just take Deshaun Watson after him because he's going to be better. And same goes with Tua. Anthony Richardson
So,
who has tremendously more upside. Aaron Rodgers even is going after.
Wow, Aaron Rodgers is going after
Aaron
Dak.
Rodgers is going almost 3 rounds after.
Okay, wow. Yeah, if you're taking Dak at that ADP, you're ridiculous. You're ridiculous. Yeah, you're like Dan said earlier, take your money, give it to somebody else because
I just want to correct myself with Debo. So 2019 is rookie season. He played 15 games. 2020 he played 7 games. 2021 he missed 1 game. And last year he played 13 games. So it still averaged out right around 13, 14 games played. I just had to correct myself there. I was looking at something wrong.
okay.
Want to tell us your last
So
bust?
my last bust. I feel like this guy, I don't know why. I mean, I personally I like him. I'm excited to see him back, but it seems like he's so beloved in the fantasy community. Um, his ADP is absurd to me, and that's Calvin Ridley. I'm stoked to see him back playing football. But we have to remember we haven't seen Calvin Ridley play football since 2021, where he only played the first 5 weeks and then he was done. So almost all of 2021 he didn't play. All of 2022 he didn't play. Now he's on a new team. He's gotten older, and he's going in the fourth round, the ninth pick, so middle to late fourth round. That is absurd to me to take a guy who's what is he 28, 29 years old. He is hold please 28 and a half. Yeah, he's 28 and a half years old. Um, there's guys, I have a bunch of guys here I put down because this one I'm like really passionate about. Amari Cooper, who finished top 12 last year in 2022. He's going 3 picks before him. Give me Amari Cooper over Calvin Ridley. Aaron Jones, a great running back who's going to probably do great this year. He's going 5 picks before and middle of the fourth round. Give me Aaron Jones. Give me a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs who's going in the fourth round. Give me a guy like Miles Sanders who's going to 5, 6 picks after him. Give me a guy like Justin Fields who's going 1 pick after him. I'd rather have the rushing upside quarterback than a risk in Calvin Ridley. Give me Jared Judy who's going 8 picks after him. Give me Brandon Ayuk who's going a whole round after him. Calvin Ridley has so many question marks. I don't doubt that he's going to be a good wide receiver, but for fantasy on that offense with so many mouths to feed, he hasn't played football in 2 years. A fourth round ADP is absolutely absurd to me. And I don't want him. If that's where I have to get him, I don't want any of it. Calvin Ridley.
He's being drafted at a premium. I agree, but I think I'm taking Calvin Ridley this year. I'm pretty high on him, and you mentioned Amari Cooper, and I think that's a perfect comparison. They're really close. I would probably take Calvin Ridley just barely over Amari Cooper.
Okay, wait.
Old.
I want to go. I want to go through those names. Who? All right. I'm just
Well, you mentioned a bunch of running backs. I did want to say every single one of those running backs I probably would take over Ridley.
Yeah.
It's the receiver conversation. It's where I would probably take Ridley over them.
Okay, I'm going to name them. You guys just say who you'd rather have. Amari Cooper.
I would have Ridley over Amari Cooper probably, but it's like right next to
I'd have Cooper over him. I think Cooper's
okay.
better.
Aaron Jones, you said, are you both on board that
Yeah.
you'd rather have all those running backs?
Yeah, all the running backs.
What about Justin Fields, who's going
I'd
1
probably
pick?
go Fields too if I needed it.
Yeah, 100% easy.
So do you see how absurd his ADP is right now?
Yeah, I get that. If you can get him like late, if he has a little bit of a fall in your draft and you can get Calvin Ridley at a steal, then I think it's worth it because if you can get him as your wide receiver 2 or somehow your wide receiver 3, that'd be incredible.
I mean, there's a very, very good chance I think it's very likely he's the wide receiver 2 on his team, but there's also a very good chance maybe Zay Jones, breaks out this year and he's the wide receiver 3 on his team. Evan Ingram, he's not a nobody. Evan Ingram's awesome. He'd be a great tight end to have in fantasy football. It's so hard for me to want to draft Calvin Ridley at where he's going for just the situation he's in, everything I mentioned. So
yeah. I agree. I'm hesitant. I mean, when a guy doesn't play football for 2 seasons, it's scary. It's scary to think that they're just going to come back and be in their premium, football shape and ready to go. Because I mean, not playing football and being out of football, you have to get used to it again. You have to your body has to be right. You have to be back in that thing. And I was actually watching some training camp videos of Calvin Ridley, and I know people put that out there to scare you, but I mean, there are some pretty bad drops, and He didn't look super sharp. And so I'm kind of growing on, Shane, you kind of talked me out of him a little bit. I think that ADP is way too high. I'd definitely rather have a guy like Amari Cooper over Calvin Ridley. I feel a lot safer and a lot better than that. But then I do think then on the other side, to play devil's advocate, I do think he complements Trevor's skill style a lot. And I think, he runs really good. I mean, if he can somehow step in and play like he did back in 2020 and he can get deep, I feel like that just complements the way Trevor plays football so well. So it's just I'm kind of on the fence. I don't like his ADP. I think it's way too high for him. But there is a chance he could be really good, but I feel like there's a higher chance he disappoints us. So I do like him as a bust.
The risk reward is just, it's not there for me. The risk is way
too early for sure.
Yeah, Shane's essentially telling the entire fantasy community just to pump the brakes. It's just a big pump the brakes moment, and it's honestly making me rethink about Calvin Ridley. I'm really high. I know I still am, but it's definitely making me think like there's a lot of variables that can go into Calvin Ridley, like more than you probably want with a 4th round pick. There's a lot of variables. Obviously,
we'd be crazy
with him not playing.
It would be crazy to think he's just going to step in and be a 1,400-yard receiver like he's talking. And that's just crazy. I mean, we've seen like guys like Antonio Brown and stuff take a season off from football and look rough, but then he got back into it and was good. I don't know. It's just, it's weird.
It's hard because on the other hand, he's such a good receiver. Last time we saw him, he was so electric. He took over fantasy, and it is really hard, man. I get the park the brakes moment though, and it's making me think.
I'd love to see him be successful.
Yeah.
But at that ADP, it's just, it scares me. It does. I'll be honest. I'll be on Shane's side a little bit more. It does scare me. I think a guy like Amari Cooper, I'd much rather have that with a much safer floor. But there is tremendous upside with Calvin Ridley. I mean, he could break out, but I think I'd rather take a safer floor like Amari Cooper or go running back in that round like an Aaron Jones or even a Fields.
Yep.
Or even a tight end would probably be in that round, like a Kittle or something that I'd probably feel better about.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with you, Shane.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, I guess that's it. That's all we're doing. We're just doing 3. This is a super fun exercise. I'm honestly, all I'm thinking about right now is Calvin Ridley and where I'd take him.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, real
got
quick,
me in my head a lot.
It feels like I'm like kind of thinking about Calvin Ridley too. It feels like he is being drafted at the premium of which, like, if he played last year, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like he's being drafted as if there's nothing, like no new situation, no new team. He hasn't played in 2 years. I feel like he's just being drafted as normal, and it's not. He's in a very interesting situation, and
Shouldn't be realistic.
It's really all projection. So
yeah. I mean, now, this is a really good exercise. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff like this, but even right now, I'm kind of shook. I'm kind of just in my head thinking, but I'm leaning more towards Shane's side. And this is a good exercise, and we need to do another one of these before fantasy starts. So we definitely need to, I want more fantasy content. It's fun. I hope you guys like it. But I love this episode. It was a blast, but man, I'm in my head thinking right now.
Yeah, super fun. And if you guys like these episodes, tune into the NFL Seekers podcast on all platforms. We have a lot of fantasy episodes, some team deep dives series coming out now. So a lot of content. Check out the NFL Seekers on everything. And that was really fun. Thanks, guys.
TikTok. Follow us on TikTok. Let's go.
Yes, please. TikTok. We're going to grow this.
Yep. It's made a TikTok, NFL Seekers podcast.
Yeah, I think it's just at NFL Seekers, right?
I don't know. Just search NFL Seekers.
I think it's just at NFL. It's just NFL Seekers is the TikTok.
All right. Follow us on TikTok, please.
NFL Seekers.
Please.
Peace.
All right, boys. That was a fun one. Let's do it again.
All right. Peace, boys.
Peace.